Bank compliance officers are responsible for ensuring that financial institutions follow the rules, ethics, and regulations set forth by government regulatory agencies. They commonly focus on areas of banking, such as retail or commercial banking, but they may also be tasked with overseeing compliance across multiple areas. Due to rampant financial malpractices in the banking sector in recent times, the focus of the Eagle today is the role of bankers in the anti-graft war. Hello and thanks for joining us on another episode of The Eagle. My name is Aisha Muhammad.
I am Abdurrashid Bawa. I stand against corruption. I call on every patriotic Nigerian to lend their voices in this crusade. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. Together we'll make Nigeria great.
We kick off the program with the Executive Chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC, Abdurrashid Bawa, calling on all anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria to key into the implementation of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy (NACS). Bawa made the call at the public presentation of the 2021 Chartered Institute of Forensics and Certified Fraud Examiners of Nigeria (CIFCFEN) country report at the EFCC Academy, Cairo, Abuja. Abbas Abubakar Umar tells us more on this.
Bawa stated that since the National Anti-Corruption Strategy (NACS) represents one of the cardinal points of President Muhammadu Buhari administration's resolve to combat corruption in Nigeria, there is need for frequent reviews to identify and tackle any gap in the fight against corruption. The EFCC chairman, who spoke through his chief of staff, Hadiza Gamawa, reiterated the commitment of the commission to the full implementation of NACS. Bawa stated that the EFCC has launched its own strategic plan as an institution that is anchored on the 5 pillars of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. He opined that every anti-corruption agency ought to key into this project, because every agency needs to develop its own institutional strategic plan that will be anchored on the NACS in order to achieve the national goal. He also commended the cooperation between the National Assembly and the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation regarding the development and transmission of the NACS to the President for assent. Professor S.A.S. Arua, in his review of the report on NACS, identified 5 pillars of the NACS and called for rigorous public enlightenment to sensitize the general public on the existence and provisions of NACS in order to achieve public ownership of the strategy and commit Nigerians to its successful implementation. Still on the review of NACS, President and Chairman CIFCFEN Ilyasu Gashimbaki said the institute was the first non-state actor that has taken time to review the NACS.
Knowing the importance of women in the society and the role they play in nation building, the EFCC has employed women in Nigeria to join in the fight against economic and financial crimes so as to have a corrupt-free country. This call was necessitated by the rampant cases of male involvement in both cyber and economic crimes in the country. Abbas Abubakar Umar, again, is our guide.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) has called on women across the country to show more commitment and dedication to the fight against economic and financial crimes. The call was made by the Secretary to the EFCC, George Ekpungbu, while receiving the delegation of the National Council for Women's Societies (NCWS), led by Hajia Lami Adamilau, at the Commission's headquarters. Ekpungbu stressed that women are better equipped to influence their men against any form of corrupt practices and should work better to separate themselves and people around them from fraudulent dealings. In her remarks, Hajia Lau commended the executive chairman of the commission, Abdurrashid Bawa, on the rising success of the EFCC in tackling economic and financial crimes. She said her group was committed to promoting women leadership, economic empowerment, and partnership for national development through advocacy, education, and cultural mainstreaming for women, children, and youths. Abbas Abubakar Umar reporting for the Eagle.
The Ilorin Zonal Commander of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC, Michael Nzekwe, has called on the Kwara State Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Kwasima, to embrace the use of the EFCC's online corruption reporting application, the Eagle Eye app, to report cases of economic and financial crimes in its business environment, stressing that it is safer, faster, and more convenient. He made the call when the president of Kwasima, Olalekon Ayodimeji, paid him a courtesy visit in his office. Here are details of the visit.
Nzekwe, who acknowledged the role of Kwasima in its advocacy and greater support for the EFCC in the fight against corruption, charged the chamber to be more involved in driving business owners in Kwara State on the path of integrity and zero corruption. The zonal commander used the occasion to educate the visitors on the recently launched strategic plan by the executive chairman EFCC, Abdurrashid Bawa, which is designed to serve as a roadmap for the realization of the Commission's mandate. According to him, the plan would, among other things, increase public engagement in the fight against corruption. He assured the Chamber of the Commission's readiness to collaborate with all stakeholders in its fight against economic and financial crimes, adding that no one could fight corruption alone without engagement of other stakeholders. Earlier in his remarks, President of Kwasima, Olalekon Ayodimeji, expressed readiness to complement the efforts of the EFCC in its quest to entrench a stable and corruption-free environment for businesses to thrive in the state. Explaining the rationale of the visit, Ayodimeji said that they were at the EFCC on advocacy visit as the two organizations are partners in the cause of promoting growth and development not only in Kwara State but in the country as a whole. The Kwasima president sought for closer rapport between the EFCC and his chamber with a view to sanitizing the business community and boosting the economy of the state. Specifically, he urged the command to address the issue of difficulty in having businesses registered online with the Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering (SCOMO), as well as other related issues faced by business owners in the state. He was accompanied on the visit by the Director General Kwasima, Prince Ayo Fagbemi, and 4 other officials and council members.
As part of continuous engagement to curb corrupt practices in the financial sector, the EFCC Kaduna Zonal Command held its quarterly roundtable with compliance officers of banks in Kaduna. The roundtable event, which was hosted by the Kaduna Zonal Commander of the EFCC, had stakeholders from the banking sector in attendance.
At the meeting, the Zonal Commander, Harry Erin, reiterated the need for holistic collaboration among stakeholders in the banking sector, especially at a time like this when a lot is happening in the country. He advised them not to allow themselves to be used as tools to perpetrate corruption because the EFCC is watching, as no culprits will be spared. The compliance officers asked questions arising from their relationship with the Commission, which were answered by the Zonal Commander. They also called for more robust laws that would help in the tracing of fraudulent transactions. Golden Onwura reporting for the Eagle.
The importance of the banks and bankers cannot be overemphasized, but there is every cause to raise alarm if bankers who are supposed to be protectors of our monies become corrupt. So what type of economic and financial crimes do bankers perpetrate? Answering our questions today is President Compliance Institute of Nigeria and former Chairman, Association of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks, ACCOBIN, Patterson Bolega. Enjoy.
The banking system is a major part of the entire global system, and as banks, we are gatekeepers to the entire gateway, and we just like every other institutional sector, we are also prone to a specific type of risks. One of them is also the risk of fraud and corruption. So we don't just bucket it only to banks. But for the banks, there are specific, kind of frauds that happen there that are very peculiar to the banks. These days, what you see mostly is cyber attacks through the internet and digital payment platforms. They are the very easy sources of likelihood of banks and the bank staff getting involved in fraud. So you see a lot more of cyber incident attacks, stealing information from within the banks, stealing customers' information to defraud customers, and also we hear a lot about sometimes loan frauds and frauds related to cash theft and robbery. It's also part of so all of these things happen in the banking industry. And like I said, the banking industry is not the only industry where frauds happen, but these frauds happen in the banking industry because of the peculiar nature of the banking industry, because we get a lot more closer to issues around cash and funds and other people's money. So these are the kind of things you see happening in banks today.
Okay. So you mentioned that some bankers get involved in these financial malpractices. In your opinion, why do you think these bankers get involved in financial crimes?
Once again, I don't want to let us not stigmatize banks. Frauds happen anywhere, and fraud happen to anybody. And as a bank, like every other institution, we have good people, we have bad people. So why people commit fraud is not peculiar to just the banks, but there is a general principle of why people commit fraud. That's what we call the fraud triangle. Basically, once there is opportunity, once you can rationalize the fraud, and once you have a motive, and you can actually anybody can commit fraud. So that theory typically says that for any fraud to happen, there has to be an opportunity. An opportunity is created, and that's why you see banking is highly regulated. The whole idea is to take away the opportunity. So people don't even have the opportunity to even tempt and then want to even rationalize their actions and maybe for a particular motive. And then another perspective for why people commit fraud, let's look at it more now from the executive perspective. Just like the triangle, there are three major drivers of fraud among executives and everywhere, not just in the banking industry. One is greed, the other one is expectations, and of course when we talk about how some individuals believe that they deserve something, so greed, that is the I culture, I alone, and so people typically have greed, sometimes pride, and sometimes the feeling of entitlement, so basically what greed is. You want to have everything, and then entitlement, you believe that because of your position you should be entitled to certain things, and then everything surrounded around you is the I. So that is what typically drives executives to want to commit fraud, and it's not peculiar only to the banking industry, but it's a generically reason why people actually go into fraud.
What would you say are the effects of financial practices on the financial sector and Nigeria as a whole?
Yes, significant impact. The first thing you have to realize is that once fraud is determined, clearly you bring an issue of reputational damage for the institution, for the country, and you create a situation where people lose confidence in the financial system. One of the major reasons why we are still struggling with financial inclusion is not many people don't trust the financial system, so they prefer to put their monies, particularly in rural areas, under their pillows. So even don't think it's just only for the people who are not literate. Even very literate people, professors, will tell you they will never touch a banking app, for example, that makes life easy for them to transact. They tell you no, I can't, so it erodes confidence in the system, and on the macro level, it erodes the confidence in countries, and you lose opportunity for getting foreign direct investments. If your country is perceived to have institutions banks that are always fraught with fraud. And there are also monetary losses arising from litigation costs, investigation costs. So you lose a lot of money, and in fact, you lose more business opportunities that you're likely to get. So it's always better not to have involved in fraud, likely because of the reputational damage, and of course, more importantly, customers' confidence, because the customers are those who make the banks what they are.
Sir, as President, Compliance Institute of Nigeria, and former Chairman, Association of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks, what disciplinary measures has the association put in place to checkmate the activities of bankers in order to discourage commission of any form of financial crime?
Yes, in fact, that's a very good question. That is one of the things that motivated me into thinking about having an institute for compliance. The idea of having an institute of compliance came up in 2012, 2013, thereabout, when I was still the president, the chairman of the Committee of Chief Compliance Officers. And then, compliance is a new area, so we didn't have enough persons who were practicing compliance in this part of the world, in Nigeria especially. So we felt that there was need for us to build capacity. And so the Association of Chief Compliance Officers now decided to invest, and we set up the Compliance Institute. The primary reason is that so that we can control people's conduct and behavior. Today you have Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, you have Nigerian Bankers Association. What these associations do is that they have a code of conduct. So in the same way, the Compliance Institute today has a code of conduct that helps the practitioners of compliance in Nigeria to behave in a certain way, in a certain professional way. And we have that code binds, once you become a member, you are bound by that code because you sign into the code. And it means that if you default in any of the areas that you are spelled out in the code, there's a disciplinary committee that you will be able to face, and you'll be given fair hearing, and of course you will have to be sanctioned accordingly, according to the code, the requirements of the code. So with that, we are able to get our compliance officers behave properly and make sure that they stand up to their professional calling in any institution in which they find themselves.
Okay. What are the roles of bankers in the prevention of financial crimes in the banking sector?
Thank you very much. This is the core of this discussion, actually. You see, a banking is about trust. And if you lose trust, you've lost everything in banking. And trust comes from having an integrity around you, right? So the first thing every banker must bear in mind is that he must exhibit integrity. And you must, as a banker, you must ensure that you avoid things that will create a conflict of interest. You must not put yourself in a compromised position. You must comply with requirements of the law concerning a banking business. You must learn to cooperate and collaborate with law enforcement and regulators when the need arises. And you must make sure you have the appropriate controls in place. These are very basic. And so having proper integrity means also making sure that within the institution you have proper ways of hiring the right people. From the organizational perspective now, they must hire the right people. They must have proper codes of conduct for staff. They must have policies and procedures in place, for staff to conduct themselves properly. And above all, they must have a proper tone at the top, a strong board that gives direction to drive the organization's vision, mission, and core values. And to make sure that it is properly, cascaded all across line in the organization. So it's very key. These things are very key, and the way we remunerate ourselves also. As part of, we must show a lot of transparency. We must pay attention to anti-money laundering requirements, because if you want to take fraud is a predicate offense for money laundering. So if you want to take the profit out of fraud, out of crime, then you have to have strong anti-money laundering measures, because that is what is going to make fraud not even happen at all. And if fraud happens, and they know that they cannot enjoy the proceeds because of the money laundering measures you have, then people are dissuaded from even going into fraud. So a company must make sure that all of these things are in place.
Thank you, sir. What are your parting words as we round off on this segment of the program?
Yeah, thank you. My parting word is that as banks, we owe it a statutory and fiduciary responsibility to our customers and to the general public to give them confidence and trust that their monies are safe. And in order for us to do that, we have to do everything we can to prevent fraud in our organizations. And what do we need to prevent fraud? We have to make sure that we have the proper governance in place in our organizations. We do proper risk assessment of our fraud exposures. We make sure that we have significantly strong fraud prevention measures, things like whistleblowing, proper monitoring systems, and we make sure that when we discover fraud, there's proper consequence. So we should have proper consequence management on how to respond to when there are fraud cases. We should also make sure that we collaborate with the law enforcement and the government, in their own efforts that they put in place to ensure sanity of the system to prevent fraud.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC wishes to inform the public that it has launched a virtual town hall meeting called EFCC Connect to expand its reach and engagement with citizens within and outside the country. EFCC Connect is an online program designed to engender close interface and collaboration with Nigerian public, provide answers and clarification to issues, sensitize and educate them on the war against economic and financial crimes using the social media platforms Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. This Wednesday on the EFCC Connect, the topic of discussion is Real versus Fake, the secret language of documents. Join the conversation on our Twitter space at official EFCC at 6 p.m. for this and more. Also, the EFCC, in a bid to sanitize its system against internal corruption and to ensure that its officers conduct themselves in a professional manner, has, through the Department of Internal Affairs, opened up dedicated channels for reporting acts of misconduct by its officers. To report any case of misconduct by any officer of the EFCC, kindly send an email to dia@efcc.gov.ng or call the Savicom unit of the EFCC on 091 58993541. Note, you can only call or send an email when you're 100% sure and have supporting evidence to back your claims. And that concludes our program for the day. We will be back next week, same time, same station. Don't forget to keep a date with us. But before we go, here is a reminder that you can send an email to info@efcc.gov.ng and speak to our officers on 0809 3322 644 and follow us on all our social media platforms at official EFCC for all matters relating to economic and financial crimes. If you see fraud happening, use the EFCC mobile app, the Eagle Eye. Download the app, follow the steps, and report fraud on the go. You can also take pictures of corrupt practices and upload them. My name is Aisha Muhammad, leaving you with this parting words that says, people should be conscious that they can change a corrupt system. Do the right thing always, and when you see something, you say something, and the EFCC will surely do something about it. Goodbye. God bless Nigeria. Please do stay safe, be kind to one another, and enjoy the rest of the week.